I'm back, baby.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full X-Men 97 Season 2, Episode 5 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs, references to the comics, so we will break it all down. Welcome back to the 90s X-Men teams that were lost through time. Now we'll all split off into other, separate teams from the comics. The episode is titled Weapon Lies and DVD, a reference to a couple different things, to the original Sex, Lies, and Videotape movie from the 90s, which starred James Spader, who you also know as the live-action version of Ultron in the MCU. He doesn't do the voice of animated Ultron on the Marvel shows. Ross Marquand does that, who also does the voice of Apocalypse and Professor X on X-Men 97, coincidentally, like he just had a scene with himself recently. R.I.P. Magneto. But James Spader is returning as live-action Ultron during the Vision Quest series. We're going to be getting episodes for that in a couple months. In the context of this episode, though, the title, Weapon Lies and DVD, is also a reference to the original X-Men the Animated Series episode, which was called Weapon Lies and Videotape, which features Wolverine dealing with his original Team X characters, which is the team that they put together again during this episode, like it's very Weapon X, Team X heavy episode. And the DVD part of the title, a reference to all the DVD files that they find at the end of the episode inside the Weapon X facility that they have been experimenting on. And there are a lot of Easter eggs in there. This time they give Morph the previously on because he's on Wolverine's team here, but he wasn't on the original Team X team. During the X-Men intro this time, they change it back to mostly the original main team of the X-Men series because they're all back in present day now, but also a lot of the Team X characters. You also notice at the beginning, Wolverine's scene here, he still has the bone claws because he still has those at the beginning of the episode. He gets his adamantium back by the end of the episode. So when he goes back to his intro in next week's episode, like if he gets an intro next week, he'll have the adamantium again like he does in the original animated series intro. They add Morph back to the intro too because he's in this episode, and Forge also gets a new scene on top of the Blackbird. Then this is meant to be a new Team X scene, kind of a flashback from the comics. Morph wears one of these suits later in the episode too. In the Marvel Universe, Team X was a CIA Black Ops team that operated during the 1960s and was linked to Weapons Plus because it's a big Weapon X episode. The original comic book version of the team has a slightly different roster than this episode, but a lot of the names that they find on those DVD files at the end of the episode are also people that were on that original Team X team. The original team was Wolverine, Sabretooth, Mastodon, Maverick, Major Arthur Barrington, Silver Fox, Wildcat, Vole, and Kestrel. This version that we meet during the actual episode was the team that Wolverine, the band he talked about getting back together in the post-credit scene from episode 4 with Captain America and Black Widow. We get another scene of Wolverine fighting Sabretooth after they left Team X fighting in the Canadian wilderness, it seems like, which they did a lot during the original animated series. Wolverine then in Japan with Yuriko. This is a big flashback showing how she becomes Lady Deathstrike in the scene of them fighting from the original X-Men animated series episodes that she appeared in. She was only in 2 episodes of the original series. During their adventure this week, they also reference the events of those previous episodes. And they still use the Magneto traditional outro here for the logo, even though Apocalypse just killed him. Even though it seemed like Magneto vaporized his body because Kang the Conqueror in time travel is involved, anything is possible. There's any number of ways to bring Magneto back on the show in the future. The episode starts with Garrison Kane joking with the rest of the former members of Team X that Wolverine is taking on their mission to the Weapon X facility, which we later find is because he wants to get his adamantium back, but also they think that they're going to get revenge on Dr. Cornelius, the head of the Weapon X program, just for what he did to them. So part of the idea is that Wolverine lied to all of them about getting revenge, and that's why they came, because he didn't think they would come otherwise.
He came here to get his claws back.
Maverick is with them too. He was on the original team in the X-Men animated series episodes. They're meant to be joking like old buds because they used to work together, but the other big joke here is that there's so much drama between some of these characters that like half the team wants to kill the other half of the team. Like Sabretooth still wants to kill Wolverine. Yuriko, Lady Deathstrike, still kind of wants to kill Wolverine a little bit. The reason why Garrison Kane and Maverick are such chatterboxes is because they promptly kill them off pretty quickly in this episode, although Maverick lasts a little bit longer than Garrison Kane.
Yeah, but they got him.
What does that mean?
I think one of the other references here too is because they were non-speaking roles in the original X-Men animated series episodes where they first appeared in the animated series. Like, they didn't speak at all during those original episodes, so we're going to let them talk a whole bunch because we're about to kill them really quickly. Wolverine says he got a tip on the Weapon X facility experimenting on new people again, and they want to take them down. Even though part of this is a ruse, like Wolverine is kind of lying to them, they do find out that the Weapon X people, the Weapons Plus people, had found a brood queen, and they were trying to create new hybrids that they thought would be easier to control because of the way the brood hive mind works. When he mentions the group that hits the hardest, that's a comic book catchphrase from the original Marvel comics in real life. There are a couple of those that happen this episode where they reference real-life Marvel comic book catchphrases. Morph does a little extra duty in this episode, recapping the events of the original animated series and a lot of the characters, like shouting out characters' names. I think for people that didn't watch the original animated series episodes and like, who are these guys? Who are these new people that we haven't seen in a while? He makes a joke about all of Wolverine's love triangles and crazy relationships over the years, talking about Yuriko and Jean Grey, which she definitely does not like. Like, how dare you keep my name out of your mouth? He then changes into Wolverine to make fun of him, who Sabretooth calls Putty Boy, who makes fun of his comic book suit, and they all just start joking back and forth with each other, like a little bit of tension, a little bit of blowing off steam. Morph winds up changing into a ton of different characters in this episode. He is like a cameo machine. All of them are stunned to learn that Wolverine doesn't have his adamantium anymore, setting up the subplot where he was trying to deceive them in this episode so that he could get it back in the adamantium chamber. Morph almost breaks the fourth wall when he says getting back to regularly scheduled programming. He doesn't actually know that they're inside a TV show, though. We get a couple funny moments of Wolverine and Sabretooth using their heightened senses to basically smell their way through the Weapon X facility, and they find that it's already been destroyed by all the brood hybrids. You also notice when they're in profile, Wolverine is walking with his back hunched over, so he's shorter than usual. This is the show's way of doing the more animalistic Wolverine that he became in the comics after he lost his adamantium, without making him go full feral Wolverine like he was in the comics. Losing the adamantium in the comics caused his healing factor to go into overdrive, making him more powerful than he was with it, and all of his senses get cranked up too. They also use this part of the episode to give us a much bigger tour of the Weapon X facility than we ever got during the original animated series. Lady Deathstrike then starts calling Morph Tomo in like a really sad way. She's actually referencing the Japanese legend of Tomo, a magical shape-shifting fox and sidekick to a powerful samurai who would shapeshift into different creatures to help the samurai on his adventures, but died tragically, as a way to foreshadow maybe Morph is gonna die trying to help Wolverine at some point, tragically. I think the idea is that by the end of the episode, once Morph learns about Wolverine's deception, he's not going to be following him around like the puppy dog he has been the last season or so. They start finding the bodies of all the Weapon X scientists that get clawed up by the brood hybrids. Sabretooth even double taps another one in the back just to be sure that he's dead. Morph does a little more recapping of the events of the original X-Men animated series episodes when he references Graydon Creed, the X-Men villain from those older episodes, as Sabretooth's biological child, which they did address in subplots and storylines during the original episodes. They run into Dr. Cornelius, who it seems like injected himself with the serum, trying to make himself more powerful or using himself as a test subject. Yukio also references the origins of the Weapon X program, the Weapons Plus program. Dr. Abraham stole the research that her father, Professor Oyama, originated in how to bond adamantium to human skeleton in the first place, the adamantium process as they call it, use it to create the Wolverine character. When he calls that dead science and Wolverine being a primitive example like small potatoes, it's an idea that they were trying to use the brood hybrids to do something even more powerful. During his big villain monologue about the Brood Queen and his new experiments, around the facility you see X-ray scans of the Brood, making it sound like they'd tried quite a bit before they achieved these new hybrids. He then transforms into a full-on Brood creature and feels like a reference to the Thing John Carpenter movie. There are a couple of those kinds of references later in the episode too. Alien creature burrowing into other people using their DNA to create hybrids, trying to jump into more powerful creatures so that they can also escape, which is basically the plot of John Carpenter's Thing. Morph changes into Puck from the comics, who was a member of Alpha Flight. I think the reason they use him specifically is because it's a big Wolverine Canada Weapon X episode, and Alpha Flight was like the other big Canadian team that he was on. He then changes into the Thing from the Fantastic Four, who only crossed over with the original X-Men animated series episode characters during Spider-Man, the 1990s animated series, in the Secret Wars episodes, so technically the Thing was already canon to X-Men the animated series, even though he didn't appear in any actual animated series episodes. It was in a Spider-Man episode that they all crossed over and canonizing everything together. Speaking of which, we also see a cameo scene from that Spider-Man when Morph changes into him later in the episode too. Don't worry, we'll get to that. But the other idea here is that in him changing to the Thing, they're trying to say that Morph knows the Fantastic Four characters. That's how he knows to change into him. So those characters exist on this planet, meaning that the Fantastic Four could show up in a future X-Men 97 episode. When Wolverine says this group of Brood smell different from the ones, it was talking about the original animated series episodes with the Brood characters because he encountered the Brood before. But part of the idea is that these are meant to be hybrids created from a different queen that he didn't run into in those original episodes. He then jokes with Yuriko that it's their second alien invasion now because in her episodes of the original animated series, they find a Shi'ar spaceship with an alien prisoner that they wind up chasing. They also reference that the bunker itself is reinforced with adamantium, which Wolverine perks up hearing, like, adamantium, yes, the reason why I came here. When the group starts turning on each other, thinking that each other might be infected with the Brood, it's also meant to be a John Carpenter Thing reference. It's a big plot point later in that movie that the group all turns on each other. Sabretooth makes a reference to keeping current with his knowledge of tech over the eras because he and Wolverine are so long-lived, and they use this for the DVD Laserdisc joke later because it's the late 1990s, 98 to be specific in the present day of the episode, so Laserdisc is like the legacy technology that's been phased out by the newer DVDs, and during this era in real life, this was also happening too with the X-Men animated series episodes that eventually did get released on DVD. But if you're old enough to have owned a Laserdisc player or you bought one later off the secondhand market, there were original Marvel comics that were released on Laserdisc, like there's Marvel stuff that was released on Laserdisc. But there are a lot of Easter eggs in all the names here on their DVD files, meaning that they're all canon to this universe, like they all exist in the X-Men animated series X-Men 97 world here. Starting with X-23, Laura Kinney, Ajax, Aurora, Phantom X, Wolverine himself, Silver Fox, Weapon 18, which is a reference to a model of X models of robots they created in the comics. Some of the names here, too, are members of that original Team X team from the comics as well, that don't appear in the episode. Cyborg, Mastodon, Winter Soldier, so maybe we'll see him show up in a future episode with Captain America, Ant, but not Ant-Man, Garrison Kane, who we just saw die, R.I.P., Sabretooth, of course, Agent Zero, Kimura, Worm, Sluggo, Kestrel, and there's even a Luke Cage reference because Luke Cage was part of the Weapons Plus program. We already saw Daredevil during Season 1, so it makes sense that we'd see other Defenders characters pop up eventually too, but Luke Cage just happens to be like a real big one. When they watch the DVD, the animation style on the video is made in the style of the original animated series, 4:3 aspect ratio, like they're watching an episode of the original animated series, and it's basically the origin of the Weapon X program, where you see Wolverine getting the adamantium bonded to a skeleton. They're all wearing the comic book helmets from the Weapon X program, they're trying to brainwash them, and they explain the Brood program and experiments in trying to create more controllable superheroes that are stronger using the Brood's biology and hive mind, and it goes completely off the rails. But you notice that there are like many test subjects here, and they all end up dying. I think this person that they're adding the Brood serum to is Warhawk from the comics, and he turns into a full-on Brood hybrid, and they imply that they have to kill him too. When Cornelius says that they didn't attempt trying to bond adamantium to any of the Brood hybrids is because he didn't think that they would survive, and the thing that they created might be uncontrollable, and his people on his team were too worried about dying, so they didn't attempt it, which I think is to set up the idea that they had reserves of adamantium in the chamber in a process that they could use on Wolverine at the end of the episode. Like there was adamantium available to be put back into his body because they didn't use it up on these Brood hybrids. We get a little funny moment from Sabretooth here. He has a lot of jokes in the episode, mostly pissy, but he says even he's impressed with how hardcore the Weapon X people are when they're trying to create these Brood hybrids. Morph then figures out the Brood hybrids are trying to breed more powerful members of their species, breed up the food chain, and when he says he's the best at what he does, that's a reference to them going after Wolverine next, so Wolverine becomes a Brood hybrid briefly in the episode. Hugh Jackman has also used that catchphrase in the live-action movies before too. They then find Omega Red, so we got a whole bunch of Omega Red in the episode for those of you that wanted to see him. He had a cameo in Season 1, but like, no, we had actual scenes, he has actual speaking lines in this episode. Yukio then references the Russians trying to replicate the adamantium bonding process that her father created because Omega Red also has adamantium. He actually solos most of the team until Wolverine gets his adamantium back too. That's how powerful they want to make him seem. The Wolverine hybrid then winds up killing Maverick, so RIP to him. Omega Red gets out, and then they give him his own theme music, so like we have new Omega Red theme music. Morph changes into Deadpool, so we get a big Deadpool cameo scene. He also changed into Deadpool during the original animated series too. That was how we got Deadpool during those original 90s episodes. Maybe we'll see more actual Deadpool in future episodes, not just a Morph cameo scene. Maybe Ryan Reynolds would come back to voice him, but I'm assuming not, because there are a lot of characters that don't come back to do the voices for their characters on this series. You use other actors to do it, which is totally fine too. Morph then changes into Silver Samurai to fight the other two to stop them from leaving and bailing on Wolverine, who also has Adamantium, so lots of Adamantium-based characters in this episode because of Weapon X and Wolverine getting his Adamantium back. Sabretooth then pieces 2 and 2 together that Wolverine only came back here to get his Adamantium back. And Morph then figures out how to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, basically get rid of the brood DNA from his body by using the Adamantium process because it'll just burn the brood out of his body. Morph changes into Cyclops to try and rile Wolverine up, just like bait him to hell, joking about the love triangle again with Jean Grey, so Wolverine's mind is still in there that he is able to be pissed off by this. He's finally able to appeal to Wolverine's core memories as an X-Men by changing into Jean Grey, so let it be known that Jean Grey is able to get Wolverine to turn around even when he's like half brood. They then herd him back into the Adamantium chamber, and I love this sequence too, where we basically get to see the Adamantium bonding process, but in animation. This is meant to be a more comic book accurate looking version of what they did with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in the Wolverine Origins movie, which number of big comic book changes in that movie. While the team tries to fight Omega Red unsuccessfully, Morph changes into Spider-Man from the 1990s animated series. We saw a bunch of cameo scenes of him in Season 1, so maybe more of him in the future. We'll see, just because there's so much Spider-Man stuff happening right now. Like, we have Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, we all have the Tom Holland live-action MCU Spider-Man stuff in Brand New Day, so we'll just see what they do with Spider-Man and all the different animated properties. Once Wolverine gets his Adamantium back, he takes out the rest of the brood, then does his classic comic book pose, egging Omega Red on. Hugh Jackman has also done this pose a couple times in the live-action movies, too. And even though they bail on Omega Red and the facility is crashing on around them and blowing up, it's pretty easy to assume that he survives this and will return at some point in the future. Like, you don't see the body after this is all done, it means that they're not dead. And even when it comes to characters like Magneto, who we saw Apocalypse literally vaporize, the potential for them coming back is there because of all the time travel and Kang stuff happening in the episodes this season. Anything is possible with time travel. Morph then gets brutally honest with Wolverine about his deception, telling him that he's sad that Wolverine doesn't know how to be something more than just the animal people think he is. It's a reference to Wolverine being a weapon in the Weapon X origins of the program. Like, he feels like he's only good as a weapon, but that's meant to be part of the cross that he bears, like part of the tragedy of the character, which Morph basically acknowledges. And when he sees Yukio, she gives him a knowing look too, like she also understands the tragedy of that. Also meant to be a nod back to her relationship with Wolverine in the past when they were living in Japan before she became Lady Deathstrike. Like, yeah, I kind of realized the same thing when we were back in Japan. Basically, Wolverine not being able to stop being classic Wolverine. But it was definitely a hardcore, deep-cut episode for big Weapon X fans. There's like a lot of lore that they got into in this episode and a lot of original episodes that they referenced. I have not seen episode 6, but I'm assuming that we get back to the main present day of the timeline and we start to deal more with the returned X-Men teams as they start to split off and go off in different directions based on the subplot and things proceeding through the rest of the season with all the Apocalypse storylines and some other big characters coming back too. Like, this episode was like a temporary side quest to return Wolverine to his Adamantium classic self so that he could be back with the team and be more useful to the team, more powerful. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below and let me know if you spotted any Easter eggs or references to the comics in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video. My full episode 6 video will post next week after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for that episode. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for all my other X-Men 97 episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.